It's suitable for instruments and also for vocal. So everyone has natural tones. So everyone has a shruti that can be aligned, right? So the instrument has to be pitched in, so all be synchronous and will be melodious to hear, right? So when it goes a little bit out of pitch or out of shruti, we can easily make out, if you have good ears, right? So a little bit about the instrument, before we get into the hands-on part of this event. A little bit about the history. I just want to touch base. As you look at the instrument, it looks old, right? So it is based on the components of this instrument. Right? So it's one of the ancient instruments. You can see it comes in different sizes. There's no one size that fits all. It comes with comfort level, right? So as you're younger, maybe you prefer a shorter. Same thing with violin, right? So you have different size violins. You have the same size of instruments. But as far as the Mridangam goes, I think the size matters for different sounds that it produces. The larger it gets, the more depth you get, right? So typically when you play for a male vocalist who has a deep or a lower frequency, right? So you obviously have a lower sounding frequency Mridangam that should support, right? So for that you go with the larger, and as you get smaller, the frequency ranges go up. So you can, as you can hear between these two, right? This is higher, right? Right? And as you look at the instrument, it has, it's a two-sided drum, and it's played in a position which is horizontal, right? So which is typically, if you look at the position, it's put it on lap, right? And you can adjust, however way you want to make it so it won't move as you play, right? So you basically free. So as you see, it has two sides, and a little bit of a base, or the main body, which is made up of wood, right? So this is made of wood, and these two sides are made of the skin of various animals, right? So typically it's sheep, or it could be other animals, right? And if you look at these two are tied to this body, which basically produces the sound, right? And it's tied to the main body with screws, but it could also be tied to leather straps like this, as you notice, right? So basically it connects the body to the both ends, right? So typically the mechanism is still the same, right? No matter how it's made, how it's tied together, the components remain the same, right? Two-sided drum with a wood and the leather screen, right? And as you see, there's a little bit of a black coat here, which basically gives the timbre, right? You can see that sound. It gives a little bit of higher frequency notes. Right. Same thing on the left hand side, depending on what hands you use. So if you use right hand, then it becomes your right-handed end of the Mridangam. If you're left-handed, then it's reverse, right? So this becomes the right, and this becomes your main, and this becomes your side. And this also has different sounds, as you can see. So if you play with closed palm, it produces a different sound versus when you play at the edge of the drum, right? So it produces various sounds. That's where the style comes in. So a little bit of on the styles. There are primarily two schools that has set standards. There's no real standards, but they have been in, for many years, since, at least few centuries. The one is Pudukkottai style and another one is Tanjavur style. So there's a lot of musicians who have inherited those styles, and if you really ask me, which style I follow both, because there's a lot of pros and cons in both styles. So it basically how you move your fingers, how you use your the edges of this mridangam, right? That's what matters. You can play in different styles, or so in different styles you can play. You can produce different sounds, and you can also make it more pleasing as you accompany a vocal artist versus an instrumental artist. So that's about the instrument history, and a little bit on the rhythm, right? So you have a structure, right? So it's not free format. I mean, there's a lot of room for imagination, there's still a structure that we all follow, right? So whether we accompany or you play as a solo percussionist, there's always a structure that we all always follow. The structure is basically, if you look at the South Indian percussion, we call it as thala or talam, right, in Tamil. There are 7 basic talams, right, and those 7 talams vary by the number of counts, right? So it could be as few as just 1, right, just beat, versus you can make it as long as you keep counting, right? So let me explain, what are those various counts, right? So 7 basic talams, so which starts with a structure called a lagu and rhythm, right? So lagu is basically, it's all about visual, right? So South Indian, that's one of the biggest difference between South Indian and North Indian, right? So the same way when you look at a Hindustani player playing a pakawaj, right? There's no visual representation of where he is, right? But if you look at South Indian performances or accompaniments, you always see a visual representation, right? So you see, where we are, where we are in the rhythmic cycle, right? Or what patterns. Even when you're singing, you visually show, where you're singing, right? So the 7 talams, if you look at, it's basically has structures. Let me explain the talams first, and then I'll get into the components of each tala, right? So the first tala is basically the basic one, which is the eka tala, right? So eka tala means, eka means it's already 1, right? So the lowest cycle count is 1, right? Then each tala can have different jatis. So the jati is basically how many fingers you count, right? So that's where the structure comes in the picture. So when you start counting, which is called the lagu, right? So the lagu defines the jati of each of these talams, right? So when you say 7 basic talams, you still have the jati or the jati that defines the number of the cycle, right? Or the total count for the one cycle for each talam. So if you look at eka talam in a chatusha jati, so chatushram means 4, right? And tishram is 3, kantam is 5, right? So 3 tishram, and you have 4 chatushram, 5 kantam, 7 mishram, and you have 9 sankirtam. So these are the 5 jatis that you can think of, right? And all these jatis fit into where the lagu goes, right? So it's visually you can see, if I look at eka talam has only lagu, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So this is chatusha jati eka talam, right? And it repeats 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. It goes on and on. Right? So then comes the next talam, which is Rupak talam, which has 6, which has Lagu and a Dhrutam. So which is Dhrutam comes first and followed by Lagu. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Again, if you look at, I'm still counting 1, 2, 3, 4 on my Lagu. Right? So my Lagu is always showing I'm in Chatusha Japa. Right? So this is the Rupa Talam, which has 6 counts, right, or matras. Right? So it started with 4, now it's 6. So now let's go into the next one, which is the Jampatala. Right? So Jampatala has Lagu, 1, 2, 3, 4, and a half, and a Dhrutam. Right? So which is makes it how many? 7, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Right? Then the fourth is Tripudatala, which is most commonly seen as an Aditala, right? So which is Chatusha Jati. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So which is basically 1 Lagu, 2 Dhrutams. So Dhrutam is basically a beat followed by a wave. Right? So we have 4 talams, right? So what are those? Ekatalam, we started with Ekatalam, then we went on to Rupa Talam, Jampatalam, fourth is Tripuratalam. Right? So then comes the fifth, which is, any guess? Mathyatalam. Right? So Mathyatalam has a structure of Lagu, Dhrutam, followed by a Lagu. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Right? Again, it's all Chatushuddha because I'm always counting 4 on my Lagu each time. Right? But it has 2 Lagus, Lagu, Dhrutam, and Lagu. So it makes it 10. Right? So as you can see, it has more counts now. Right? We started with just 4 in Ekatalam, now it's like 10 now. Right? The longer it gets to complete one cycle. Right? So then comes the 6th one. Any guesses? Atatalam. Yes. Let's keep the Dhruvam for the last one. Right? That's the longest one. So Atatalam has 2 Lagus and 2 Dhrutams. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So it has more. Right? Then the last one is the Dhruvatala, which is the longest of all. So it has Lagu, a Dhrutam, followed by 2 Lagus. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Ready? Right. So it progresses, as how many hour cycles you want to have, and you can, fit in rhythmic patterns, or we can play a song, we can, accompany together, or any instrument can, play or showcase these talas. Right? Again, this is only a Chatusha Jati, right? So again, the variations, like I said, you can have the variations in your jatis, right? So if I just count 3, then it becomes Tishra Jati, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, which becomes a Tishra Jati Tripudatala, right? And it goes on, right? So it can be as long as your Dhruvatalam in Sankirna Jati, right? So each one will have 9, right? Followed by Lagu, Dhrutam, Lagu, Lagu. So 9, 4, then again 9 and 9. And then, and besides these jatis, you can have the nadais, right? So if you just look at the number of syllables, right? So we only counted the notes. So now you can fit how many syllables that you can fit in one beat or one finger count, right? Ta, ti, tom, dum. So it is the lowest syllables, right? Number of syllables, which is one per note, right? Versus right? So now it's becoming, I'm fitting more syllables, so it's become a little faster, right? But my speed remains the same. So there's a lot of variations. So you have this jati that goes on one side, then you have number of syllables, then you also have the speed versus, right? So you can adjust the speed or you can adjust the number of syllables, right? So for example, if I fit 9 syllables, so it becomes more vocal because I'm fitting more syllables into the same the counts as you visually see. Right? So that gives a lot of flavors, a lot of variations in how you hear and how you see anyone playing a kriti in those styles. Anything else you want to know about Mridangam? I'll open it for questions before we get into action.
You can talk about Cholukattu, like,
Yeah, Cholukattu is basically how, like I said, Kadimir, Kajuna, Kadimir, Kajuna, Kadimir, Kajuna, Kadimir, Kajuna. Tadim taka takita, tadim taka takita, tadim taka takita, tadim taka takita, tadim taka takita. Curtain target, curtain target, curtain target, curtain target, curtain target, curtain target. So there's a lot of what we call as Cholukattu, which is basically framing these syllables together in a nice audible way, right? And also it can also demonstrate how complex it could be, right? So it doesn't have to be always on the beat, right? It could also be off the beat a little bit. Tadingi natum, tadingi natum, tadingi natum, right? Which is basically tadingi natum, tadingi natum, tadingi natum, which is on the beat versus tadingi natum, tadingi natum, tadingi natum. So it could be a little bit off. We can same way. We can also, when you might have noticed kritis that also goes the same way, right? You may not be always on the beat, right? So which is on the beat, we call it as samam, right? Or the resolution time, right? So this is where you try to resolve. So you have to end the cycle wherever you start. You have to end the cycle at where you started, right? Which is called the resolution point, which is called the samam, right? But the samam need not be always on the beat. It could be after samam, right? Which is called as an edupu, right? So which is, for example, you have kritis set up, and again you'll be playing few kritis today, and which will also demonstrate those. Where it starts, it matters, right? And as you accompany and you play a solo performance, you try to stick to those starting and end points, right? If the kriti starts after a beat, right? For example, Akka, right? Shiva 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 Gyananata, oh Shiva 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 Shiva. So it's starting after Taka. So when you play, you try to form rhythmic patterns along that same way where it always lands on where the kriti starts. So those are the nuances. And today we'll be demonstrating a little few pieces together. And as I play, I'll also say those Cholukattus for one of those, and see how I say it versus how I play it. So we'll see those. Any other questions?
What is the structure of your Taniyavatram? I always am puzzled how that works.
Okay, yeah. So Taniyavatram is since it's all just the beats and the how you hear. unless you visualize it, right? So with two hands occupied, I mean, there's no way I can demonstrate where I'm at, right? Unless someone visually shows, okay, here's where he's at, right? The Taniyatram could be as elaborate as hours together versus few minutes, right? Like today we'll be demonstrating a quick one, right? Depending on the time, duration, you can elaborate, and basically you have a few slow phases you start with, right? Depending on the time you have for solo performances. Typically start with the slow, like I said, beat, boom, boom, good, boom, beat, done, boom, boom. And then you can go on to a few faster phrases, right? Which is more, nicer and rhythmic to hear, right? So you can show a lot of these nice phrases without getting really complex, and you can also play a little complex a piece which can basically split the thalam into two different fashions, which is basically we call it as Purvangam and Uttarangam. So anywhere it goes in the first half of any thalam, we call it as Purvangam, and the later part will be the Uttarangam. So you can have variations in the Purvangam part, and you can have variations in the Uttarangam part, right? Tum, taka tum, takita tum, tadingina tum, tadingina tum, tadingina tum, tum, taka tum, takita tum, tadingina tum, tadingina tum, tadingina tum, taka tum, takita tum, so if you notice, the Purvangam Uttarangam has two different variations. So the Purvangam I always say tat tum, taka tum, takita tum, taka tum, takita. I could have said the same thing, but I changed a little bit on the Purvangam side. Tum, taka tum, takita tum, tadingina tum, tadingina tum, tadingina tum, tadingina tum, tadingina tum, tadingina. I could have said on the Purvangam too. So you can say you can fit all these patterns in those phase of the solo performance. Then as you can change in nadais, like I said. So you can play variations in the notes, and you can also change even a faster one. So 7 syllables, so you can play variations in that. So when all these are done, then you go towards the final phase of that solo performance, which is you start making it a little faster, right? So it's more like a climax, right? So you have to make it faster. So everyone will be curious to see, where it goes, where it's going to end, right? So it gives a little bit of an anxiety, right? So you start playing. So you can play a few faster, which is called the furrents, and then you get into the very end part, which is basically divided into two things. One is called mora, followed by korve, and you can play a lot of korves in between, right? In those with variations of nadai and all those. But towards the end, you try to stick where you have to go back at the summon or the edupu of the main artist, who has to start after where you left, right? So you try to see a form of korve that forms in such a way that it falls on the same place where the kriti will start, so you can showcase, okay, so the end that you have resolved, right? So the Corway, the Mora and Corway is typically played towards the end, which you can see start identifying with the fast phrases that that's played before, right? And it's kind of a visual indication that you're trying to speed things up, and you're getting towards. And the Mora and Corway are typically played 3 times, so you can also make that way, right, to some extent. The Mora could be played so many ways, and same way with Corways, or endless, with up to the imagination of the artist. Typically, like I said, it's played 3 times. So again, an indication of, okay, here's my first time, so here's my second. So a lot of times, the third time, what is played. So like I said, the Purvangam and Uttarangam, right? So if you know the Uttarangam, where it ends each time, you already know, okay, so now it's going back to the second round. Now you're going back to the third round. So that's why the Purvangam and Uttarangam are like key. You keep listening to as we play, right? So today we'll demonstrate a little bit of that, and I'll show where the Mora and Corway fits. Okay. All right.
So what is that used for? I'm so sorry to interrupt. I'm always curious with the you
Well,
use the thing.
So if you look at, it has to be really stretched. So now if you, here it's a little bit loose, as you can see, even if you, as you see where I'm pressing this, it's not as tight as where it should be, right? It could be related to weather, it could be related to, the aging of the instrument, right? So there are a few quick tips. This is not a permanent solution. So I use this a basic thing, which is a thread, and you wrap around this the frame, right, the outer frame, and you can see the difference versus. So it gives more tension to this skin. started the Kriti after the sum. Right? So which is after the beat. So I have an option to play summum, always to summum, right? Then that ends the whole performance, right? We have to go back to where we ended, where we left off, right? So he has to join me back. So for that I need to fit where he started. So this Kriti apparently happened to be after the song. So I have to play something that falls to where he would be able to start the Kriti, right? So need to form, rhythmic pattern or phrases, so that will fit according to the column that will end at the right place where the Kriti start, right? So let me play. Yeah, I'll play. Then I just play, right? Gives different variations, like it played hard and soft. So then we can play a variation of rhythmic patterns. Right? Started in summum and it ended in where the Kriti would start. Right? So that's one of the rhythmic pattern which is played. Right? dingina, ta dingina, ta dingina, dingina, ta dingina, ta dingina, ta ding, ta dingina, ta ding, ta dingina, ta ding, ta dingina, ta ding, ta ding, ding, ta ding, ding, ding. So let me play that 3 times now. Faster phrases and I'll play the mora followed by chord. Right? Yeah. Continue the harmony. Yeah, sure. I mean, it's basically again another how you frame the syllables, right? So you can start with one syllable and making it more progressive, and you can also do it in ascending descending. You know, ta, 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 ki, ta, 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 ki, ding, ta, ta, di, ki, na, ta, ta. So you can reduce also. Ta, di, ki, na, ta, 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 ki, ding, ta, ta, ki, ta, 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 da, da. So that's one of the things I played here. Ta, ta, ki, ta, ta, dim. Taki ta dim, taki dim, ta dim, taki ta dim, taka ta dim, ta da dim, ta dim, dim, ta dim, na, ta dim, na, ta dim, 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 ta dim, na, ta da. So you can make it progressive. That's combos. Get these.
I always have trouble to follow, like, when you say 3 steps, it's hard to recognize where the person
Yeah. So for example, like I said, the mora followed by chord wave. So you can always make out where the chord wave is repeating, and And you can say, that's number 1, number 2, number 3. So if I play, so people call them, I'll play the mora and go away. This is mora, followed by chord, right? So now, let me play the mora and then I'll go to the chord. Now the chord is starting, right? So on the summer, right? So this is 1, the first part of the chord. So I'll play it 3 times. So that shows, that's the end of the first time I played the chord. Right? And I'm going to repeat the same thing 3 times. The right ensemble, right?
So that's in the later part of the piece, you'll see all the jetties that he'll be talking about, like all the jetties.